welcome to the Yarn Parlor. I'm Alison. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as alev@1. Today is Wednesday. I'm a day late, but it was really due to the weather. It's starting to get cold and cloudy here. It's actually overcast right now, so we'll see. I don't know, there's still a lot of sunlight coming through, so it should be fine. But it's starting to get cold and rainy and cloudy. Yesterday was our first day of that, so I just didn't want to podcast yesterday. Anyway, this is episode 32. I hope everybody in the States had a happy Halloween, and I want to say thank you to all new and returning viewers. This is my podcast about knitting, spinning, knitwear design, and show notes go up on the Ravelry group Thursdays. That's when I post them, so tomorrow. Today I'm going to be talking about, I announced the giveaway that I've been running for the ice cream kit. I have my November yarns to go over, some FOs, acquisitions. I got one thing in this week, and some future knitting and some spinning that I've been doing this week. So before I announce the ice cream kit giveaway, I wanted to announce my next giveaway because I have passed the 500 subscribers on YouTube. Yay! And I wanted to do a giveaway for it. So I've got another giveaway that I'm doing. Perfect timing right before the holidays, so it's great. If you go into the Ravelry group, I'll have a thread started there with a question that you answer. You know the drill. I haven't put together the prize yet, so I will be working on that. But it will most likely be a couple project bags, some stitch markers, and some Israeli goodies, treats and things. So it'll be a nice little prize for the giveaway. Yeah. But I do want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the YouTube channel. And I think that I've gotten majority of my push over the 500 subscribers is probably from Mina Phillip of the Knitting Expat and from Diane, the Suburban Stitcher. I sent them a couple of the ice cream bags as gifts to talk about, you know. And I think I have snagged a couple of their viewers as well. So thank you if you are new. Thank you for subscribing, and just thank you to everybody who has subscribed. It really means a lot because, as everybody has been saying, there are a lot of knitting podcasts out there right now. So thanks for sharing some time with me. So on to my ice cream kit giveaway. It is was for, because I have picked a winner, this 2 skein project bag, the Little T Studio stitch marker in the Neapolitan sandwich, ice cream sandwich, and the Neapolitan colorway of Diabolical Yarns Tarhi sock, which is 90 superwash Tarhi wool and 10 nylon. 395 grams. And the winner is Melissa Knits. It was number 7. And so if you can PM me your address, I can send this out to you. Thank you to everybody who entered. There were a lot of yummy, yummy ice creams. I didn't go in there until I picked a winner this morning, so I got to scroll through everybody's ice creams, and it made me want some ice cream really, really bad. One that did stand out that I want to talk about real quick was Shara from Shara Made Podcast in Australia. She said that she lives near a gelato shop that will sometimes take in local farmers' extra fruit and turn the fruit into that week's flavor, which I thought was really interesting. And then she also mentioned that her favorite flavor from them is rose water and maple syrup, which sounds delicious. If I ever go there, I need to have some of that in my life. And I also wanted to mention Shara for another reason, because She finished a fox paws shawl from Xander Peters Designs, and her designs just look simply amazing, and they're always eye-catching, and I've wanted to try one, but they look so difficult. But Shara finished her shawl and posted it on Instagram, I think it was yesterday. You guys should go and check it out because it is amazing. It's stunning, and it looked like a lot of hard work. Maybe one day I'll like knit a little swatch or something because I don't think I can do a whole shawl like that. It's pretty spectacular to look at. Maybe that's what this podcast should be about. Other people's knits. November yarns. So I will pick I've already picked my November yarns for my socks challenge and my Deborah Newton swatch challenge. I'll go over those now. The sock challenge yarn that I have is by Black Bunny Fibers. Here is the card for that. And it is on her Luna base. It is called Sugar Pop is the colorway. It's 20 nylon, 75 superwash, and 5 stellina, 430 yards in the 100 gram skein. And it's all pastels, which is a little bit different for me. I picked this up at the Vogue Knitting Live last year in Chicago, and it was because it was really different. Pastel-y colors, not something, they're pretty bright, but it's still muted pastels, which is not usual for me. So I wanted to, and I was kind of in this space where I wanted to pick a lot of yarns that I am not normally buying. So it was a lot of different fiber content and colorways. So that's why I have this. And that's why I put it into my sock challenge. So I've been falling behind on my sock challenge. But these last 2 months, I want to try and revive it and actually complete my socks. So I also didn't want to knit vanilla socks. However, I think for this month, I may just knit these in the vanilla sock and try the Susan B. Anderson's Smooth Operator sock pattern. It's an Afterthought heel. She does use waste yarn and for the Afterthought, and I kind of, since I've tried it without waste yarn, I kind of like that better because then you don't have to figure out where you're putting your heel until afterwards. But I will try her pattern her way and try and place my heel properly. But everybody's been raving about it, and I figured I like Afterthought heels, so might as well try the pattern. And I will knit this on my new signature needles, the Zeros 2mm. I don't know if it's going to be a vanilla sock or not. It might be like a simple pattern, but just something real simple so it flies off the needles. Socks don't normally fly off my needles, so that is what is going to happen for my November sock yarn and for my Deborah Newton swatch challenge. Now, if you're new, I started this swatch challenge. Every month I try out a new yarn because I took a Deborah Newton class in last year's Vogue Knitting Live in Chicago, and she had mentioned for like this challenge for new designers to try out a different yarn, different content, something that you may not like or something just unusual to you, and make swatches from this yarn so that you know how to work with it, how to design with it in the future or at that moment. So I picked 12 different yarns to try. I'm absolutely enjoying this swatch challenge, and this month's yarn is Quarry from Brooklyn Tweed. This is their bulky yarn. It's a little bit hairy. Got fiber everywhere. And a couple months ago I used Shelter, which I liked. And so I'm going to be trying their bulky. This is the Lazulite colorway, which is a lovely blue. And 200 yards. Suggested needle size is 10 or 11. Yes. This is 100 grams. And so I'll look up every month what other people in Ravelry have said about that yarn, just so I can get a clearer idea of what to look out for when knitting, and also to see other people's projects to see how the yarn looks already in different types of things. So obviously this yarn, it's chunky. It's a 3-ply, but it looks like a single. It's their woolen spun, which is I think what they do for all of their bases. And it's it looks wonderful in cables, like most chunky yarns. And for the pros and cons on this yarn, a lot of the cons are the same as Shelter, same as most of their yarns, that it breaks easily. There's a lot of veggie matter, and some people have complained about the weight of their actual skein. Now, Brooklyn Tweed will respond and say that no matter what the actual weight is, it's always 200 yards, but woolen spun is kind of hard to keep its thickness. So some of it is a little bit thick and thin, a bit different throughout the yarn because of the woolen spun, but you should always be guaranteed the 200 yards, whether your skein is a little bit light because of thinner spots. You should always have 200 yards. So, and the pros were that it was really squishy, which it is, and also that making a large sweater, or in general a sweater, a larger object, it still has this wonderful lightness to it, because the yarn is lofty, because it is woolen spun, which kind of made me think it's interesting that some of the cons and most of the pros are because of this woolen spun. It will make it loftier, it will make it squishier and lighter as a yarn, but it will also cause it's a fragile way of spinning, so it will cause possible breaks. I did not have that problem when working with Shelter, so I'm hoping I won't have that problem working with the Quarry, but those are concerns that other people have had. I think when I was looking at patterns, there are some amazing patterns for Quarry that I just wanted to share. I'll put these in the show notes as well. The Bracken, which is a child's sweater, the Phaedra hat, which I actually want to knit. I was like, maybe I should scratch this month's yarn challenge and just knit the hat out of Quarry. But I have other plans. And the last pattern that a lot of people were knitting was the Deschutes sweater. It's an woman's adult sweater. But those patterns seem to be popping up on almost every page under the Quarry yarn. So, and they're beautiful, beautiful patterns to check out if you have bulky yarn that's not just Quarry. I think so every month, if you're new to the show, every month I knit 3 swatches out of my monthly yarn. One is a stockinette, and then the 2 others will be something that may not normally be used with this yarn, just to see how it functions. Like in this case, Quarry, I know that cables are going to look beautiful. Textured stitches are going to look amazing. They're going to pop in this yarn. So I'm going to try and stay away from those and try something else that is a little bit more unusual for this yarn, just to get an idea of how it would look. So I want to try a lace pattern. I think there was only like 1 or 2 that I saw in the Quarry that were lace, and they weren't, there wasn't a lot of lace. So I'm going to try a lace stitch and also a bias knit. Again, there were a couple bias knit patterns, but it wasn't It was more of like a rib bias knit. I just wanted to do something along those lines. There weren't that many, so I wanted to get more of a visual on how bias knitting would look in this yarn. So those will be my 3 swatches for this month. Next is my FOs. I have some FOs. Well, I have, technically it's 1 FO and some of my swatch challenges because I'm a little bit late in discussing my swatch challenge yarns. So I will go over September and October's yarn. So September's yarn was Habu. It was the Nirimaki Ito in the color Canary. It's 100% silk. The item number is A-46, I think. It's rubbing off on this label. There's 130 yards. It's a thick and thin. And I didn't like working with this yarn. Before I put this one, it was from my stash, and I put it into the yarn challenge because I just didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, maybe I'll make up some swatches in my yarn challenge and figure out what I want to make with this yarn. It didn't really help. I don't like this yarn. So I really struggled with working with this yarn, but I'll show you. And I don't know, I bought like 6 skeins of this yarn. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I think I'm just gonna have to throw it away. I'm just kidding. I don't throw yarn away. I don't know, I'll figure out something. Anywho, so this is my stockinette swatch, and I can easily show you why I don't like this yarn, because the thick parts, they don't bend into stitch shape so easily, so you get these like weird floaty bits. Oh, this yarn drove me crazy. You can see more of it, I think, on this side. They just stuck out, and it's so abstract for me that I just can't function with this yarn. I don't like it. I forgot to write down what needles I used, but I think it was an 8 or a 9. It was so long ago, and I took poor notes. It was right before my trip to New York, and I wasn't thinking, and I was like, of course I'll remember. No. But I think it was 8 or 9 US. The second swatch that I did was a garter. I just wanted to keep the stitches simple because the yarn is already so bizarre. So here is my garter stitch, which I don't know if the correct wording is more pleasing to me, but it looks a bit better than stockinette. I think before I was just saying that I would knit a garter shawl and give it as a gift to someone. It has beautiful drape. It feels wonderfully soft. It actually kind of looks better on screen, so maybe from far away. It looks really nice from far away. I just don't like it. Moving on. So the last swatch is a bit different for me because I incorporated another yarn, which I wasn't technically going to do with the swatch challenge, but I wanted to come up with something else, and this is just kind of like a thought, an idea, more of an artistic stitch to possibly incorporate in the future. And I got it from actually a sweater that I took apart, but it's using 2 yarns, this sweater. And this is a machine knit sweater, but it has these floats. The white fuzzy boucle yarn is floating across the gray. There's the back. So I wanted to try and do something like this. It's not the exact same stitch as the sweater in my swatch, but that was my inspiration for it. So I brought in this brushed Surrey from Blue Skies, which is there's the content. All right. 67% baby suri, 22 merino, and 11 bamboo. So this one is a little bit, it's been in a bag for a bit, but it's supposed to be like super fluffy, and it is super fluffy. So the reason I use this yarn is because the silk is so smooth and stringy that when knit, you can see all of the holes and the crevices. And I wanted to keep a thicker, denser stitch. So the hair from this one would fluff up around the silk and not leave the holy gaps. And this is what I did. So, actually it's upside down. So I started with doing every other row, and I would float the thick bits, skipping 4 stitches. And I thought that these floats were looking a little bit too close together, so then I did it every 3rd row was the silk, and I did the same thing with the floats. It was 4 stitches. And this is a very blown up concept of this sweater, but it still looks kind of interesting on both sides, to be honest, with all the, you just get the little strips of white in there. So, I mean, on this, if I did a sweater, obviously these floats could snag. It's a little bit more artistic, if you will. But I think mission was kind of accomplished with this swatch. It was just something interesting and kind of a visual inspiration for when I design. So those were my 3 swatches. And for September, and I usually try to discuss how I would design with this yarn after. I will not be designing with this yarn. I will figure out something to do with it and probably just make the garter stitch shawl wrap thing and give it away and never work with this yarn again. My October yarn was much better, and it was Araucania, I think is how it's pronounced. It is 100% sugarcane, 263 yards in 100 gram skein, and this is the Ruka Multi-Color 11, which I believe is discontinued, but they still, no, it's not discontinued. I don't remember. Don't quote me on that one. So my stockinette swatch is here, and I used size 6 needles, but it was these bamboo needles that I have, and it wasn't the normal 6. What was it? It was like 4.25 millimeter, and a 6 is usually 4, so this is a little bit larger than a normal 6. But it was really interesting to see this is quite drapey. And the reason I use this yarn is because I had one skein of it, I didn't know what to do with it, and I didn't really like the colors that I chose after all. So I threw it into the swatch challenge because this has a beautiful drape. It's like well, it is a viscose basically from sugarcane. So it's got a drape like a bamboo or silk. So I can look at these swatches when designing with those yarns and kind of get an idea of how it will drape or look. But with this one, because it has that color variegation, I used, with the swatch, the stitch count that I used, you can kind of see that the blue stayed mostly on this side, then there's like some purple mingling here, and then the pink stayed mostly on this side, which I thought was really interesting. And something that I actually want to play around with in the future. There's a Craftsy class about working with variegated yarns and getting this, it's like a magic number of stitches so that you can play around with the color, which I thought was really cool. Something I wanted to do this year, but it'll probably have to happen next year. Too many things going on. Anyway, there is my stockinette swatch, now that I've talked enough about stockinette. The other things that I wanted to try was making a ruffle and a textured, seeing how a textured stitch would look while using a drapier yarn. So the ruffle that I am copying, I had not necessarily copying, but my inspiration was from, this was a past employer's, this was on the bottom of a jacket, but it's this ruffle, as you can see. And it's nothing special, but I had never knit a ruffle before, so I wasn't quite sure the construction or how to do it, and if I can get one by itself. This is on the purl side. This is also a machine knit garment, but you can see it's like almost any other ruffle, but they put a hole in between the wedges. So that's kind of what I wanted to do. I love that, don't you? Ugh, love this ruffle. So it's kind of what I wanted to do, and I totally just played around with this. And when I first was knitting with this yarn and I'm trying to hold up the ruffle, I'm like, oh, that is not looking nice. It was stiff still, and I was like, this is gonna be the worst thing ever. It's not. It actually drapes beautifully. So I did the longer wedges are on this side, and I tried different hole constructions. As you can see, some of them are bigger, some of them are yarn overs, some of them are knit into yarn overs type of thing. And then this side I did the smaller wedges. So this one was every stitch I short rowed, and this one was every other stitch I short rowed. So I get the bigger and smaller ruffles, but I think it came out, it drapes so pretty. Isn't that so pretty? I love it. And with this coloring, it also is quite interesting because it kind of came out striped. I don't know if you can see that. Maybe it's too bright. It's too bright in here. But it kind of striped up nicely, which was cute. So this I wanted to do as an example of a ruffle that I might attach to tunic or a top, creating a nice little drapey ruffle. It came out better than I thought. And it gives me a couple ideas of how to do those. I just got to play around with yarn overs. On this side I didn't do any yarn overs right there. But how it would come out visually with different holy aspects. So there's that ruffle, which I'm very happy with. And my textured stitch, I used a mistake rib. And as you can see, it's not, like if I pull it down, it'll kind of create more of that textured vibe that it's supposed to have. But stretched out, it's flat. However, the stitch gives it obviously gives a unique look to it. So I really liked this. And I started playing around with it, and it would look really cool this way as well. Almost adding this vertical striping effect. And it's drapey, nice boxy sweater with that. But I really like how the texture, even though the texture doesn't pop and doesn't stand out, it still gives a nice visual look to it. So I really liked the way that this came out as well. Doing a textured stitch in a more slinkier yarn. And the other thing about this one is that it's the same front and back. So if you wanted to do like a collar or one of those drapey cascade cardigan type of things, if it falls to the outside, it'll look the same on the inside as the outside. It won't be like a purl stitch on when it flops and ruffles and cascades in the front. So that was something else that was unique. So those are my swatches for my October yarn. Also wanted to mention that Miriam from the group just knit a top out of this. Shoot, was it called like the Cancun top or something like that? I think that's the pattern. I will put it somewhere in here. And I also wanted to show some photos of her top on the podcast, which I will be adding in here as I'm talking. It came out wonderful, and I like her colors better than the colors that I have. Hers are like peachy and blue and beachy and beautiful. It's the perfect pattern for this yarn. It's drapey and wonderful and perfect for Israeli summers. So that was just beautiful, Miriam. Beautiful top. Oh, the needles I used for the other swatches, sorry, I wanted to do a tighter gauge. I used 5s, which are 3.75 millimeter. And I used the square collage for those. These are some of their earlier ones, so the cord is like really loosey-goosey. And at first it didn't bother me, but now when I'm knitting with larger projects, I don't actually like this loose cord. I think they've changed well, I know that they've changed their cords. I don't think they sell this kind anymore anyway. But it's perfect for the swatches because I don't actually use the cord. On to my last FO, which is the fringe shawl. Oh, I love this thing. It's a beast. It is a complete monster. I blocked this and it's literally bigger than my couch. Here it is, halved in all its glory with all of its fringe. Oh, it's so awesome! Here is my fringe shawl. Look at how big this thing is. Oh, it's so big. And it's just kind of big and poncho-y. I just love all of it. So I fringed and then I blocked, and a lot of the fringe, because it's single, well, the hedgehog fibers in particular, the other fringe kind of wah, but the hedgehog fibers floofed up at the edges because it's this single. Here is, if I can get it, here's what the yarn started out as a fringe, and here is what it fluffed up to be. You can see the difference there at the ends. And then the other yarn I used was a silk and merino blend. And that just kind of, it kept its shape, but it's really drapey and very shiny, so both of them came out wonderful, and it's going to be so squishy soft and basically my blanket for the winter. So the yarns I used for this, I'll go over really quick. I used a US 8 needle. Now this pattern, fringed by Stephen West, is supposed to be a DK weight yarn, and this is the merino singles, which is more of a worsted weight. So I used Hedgehog Fibers Genie and Jelly. I used 2 skeins of each, and this is what I have left. I have more pink left, but I also fringed with more of this. But I wanted to save some of this because I want to knit another item, which I will talk about in a second. And then I used the 2 greens are from Luxury Diamond Collection, Mulberry Merino. I've talked about these before, but there's my 4 yarns. I have plenty left over for other projects. The fringe shawl, it's a beast, but it's beautiful. I love it. And moving on to acquisitions, because I don't have any whips. All I did was work on the fringe shawl to finish it. So no knitting whips for this week. When? This is a knitting podcast. But I do have, I did have finished objects, so that was cool. I have this acquisition from Whimsy Stitches. It's little hedgehogs. And Rick is the owner of the shop and the sewist. I think he writes on his card zoologist or something. It's really cute. He sent along some stitch markers, the hedgehog and the little sheepy. There's his tag. Whimsy stitches. Oh, I held that up upside down, I think. Whoops. But he's on Etsy, and I'll put a link in the show notes. And the inside is polka dots, and he put a little pocket in there as well, which is nice. Oh, I have his card. What does he say? Zoologist. It's cute. So, and he sent along a little mini skein as well. Thank you very much, Rick. But I asked, he put on his Instagram feed this fabric, and I was like, that is so cute, I want some. And it's hedgehogs, and I instantly thought of hedgehog fibers. And so this is my hedgehog fibers bag, which leads me to what I want to do with that hedgehog fibers left over from my French shawl. And I want to make, for my first project, for my hedgehog fibers bag, I want to make an excuse me hat from Stephen West, because this is the year of Stephen West in my life. So I'm going to use the jelly and the rest of my genie, and I think I'm going to throw in a teal from over here and make an excuse me hat. We'll see how that works out. I have many, many projects. This one won't go in the bag though, because it's not hedgehogs. But this is hedgehog fibers for my hedgehog bag. Which goes into future knits for me. Now I know that like a month and a half ago I had a total cast on party, but I'm gonna have another one because I'm not a monogamous knitter and I like casting on things. So, and I want to use some of my hand knits, hand spun yarns. I'm very, very excited about them. So the first thing I want to use is this hand spun. It was one of my first hand spuns, and it's from one of my first fiber purchases. This was from Classy Squid, and it was called Turkey Trot, and it was something, roll eggs that she made last November, I believe. I think I bought them in December though. Anyway, and I think it's Shetland yarn. I don't label anything, so I've completely forgotten what it was. I've shown this before in the podcast though. But it's white, red, and brown. Those are the colors. My husband really liked this yarn, so I think I might make him some fingerless mitts because I don't have a lot. This is it. It was like 2 ounces, so I might even need to add some yarn to them. But yeah. So I think I'm going to make him some fingerless mitts out of this, if I can find a pattern. I'm sure I can find a pattern. The next thing I wanted to work with is this giant chunky fabulousness that I have spun from Spin City Bats. This is the Moroccan tea colorway, and it just keeps coming. And I made just a super bulky, I was trying to do an art yarn, but it just made super bulky 2-ply. And there was I found a free pattern that I had gotten from Helen Stewart because I signed up for her newsletter. I think that's how I got this pattern, but it's, what is the cowl called? It is called the Squish Up Cowl. I don't have enough yardage for that cowl, but I can adjust it and figure something out to use this yarn for and just make a big old thick cowl, which I'm going to love. And I'm going to use these size 15 needles from Addie. My friend got me these for a wedding present. Is it gonna show up? There's Swarovski crystals in them. I don't know if it's showing up. And I love things that glitter. So she bought me these as a wedding present, and I get to use them finally. And my last idea for November, because I don't have enough things to knit in November, including socks and the Swatch challenge, is that this is the yarn that I bought in New York in this most recent trip. I didn't bring the tag over here, but I will show it when I start knitting. But this reminded me of Quarry's Sulfur, and it's very similar thickness to the Quarry. It is a bulkier yarn, but this is a single ply. And I want to knit that Phaedra hat that I recently found that I was obsessed with and really wanted to use my Quarry to actually knit that hat instead of the Swatch challenge. But then I remembered that I bought this, and I will knit the hat out of this. It's a beautiful hat pattern, beautiful. So I have to have it. And yeah, so those are going to be in the works in the near future. I think I've completely given up on trying to do Christmas knits like I wanted to this year. I'm completely okay with that. Nobody will get hand knit gifts this year. I will. I will get hand knit gifts this year from myself. Moving on to spinning. I wanted to mention a couple giant mistakes that I made with spinning and soaking my yarns this past week, which was but I will mention them here as a learning experience, right? I was soaking my yarns fast. I was like, I just want to get it done. I have so much hand spun that I haven't washed yet, and so I just want to do it really quick while I'm blocking my shawls. And so the first, I do it lights and darks, and I'll just soak them all together. So my first batch of light hand spun yarn, I did not towel off. You're supposed to soak it, squeeze out some of the water, and then squeeze out more of the water in a towel, which I did not do the first set of yarns. And it took them like an extra day to dry. They were just soaked. Like, I thought that my hand squeezing was enough. I'm like, towel, that's just like a suggestion, right? Well, it is a suggestion if you want your yarns to dry fast, which everybody wants their things to dry fast. So, future note to self, always towel off your yarns before I do a little thwacking, and then or snapping, whatever it's called. And I then hang them to dry. Well, towel dry them before you snap, because it does. As I proved to myself in the second group, I slowed down my fast trying to get my yarns done, soaked. I toweled off those, and they dried way quicker than the first group. So my second faux pas with my yarns was that I was working with spinning some, I think it's a Shetland as well. I can never remember Shetlands, apparently. I think it was a Shetland blend, blended with yak. And I wanted to full it a little bit, which is kind of, you start with the hot water and then you shock it with cold water. And I was like, I'm just gonna soak it and put it in the hot water and just leave it, whatever. And I did not full it, and now it is not as strong. Like, you full those yarns to make them a little bit stronger so that they stay together and do not fall apart when you knit them or after a couple years. I didn't full the yarns, and I wish that I had, and I was just rushing through it, and so we'll see how that works out. I'm sure that I could go back and full the yarns now, soaking them a second time, but we'll see how it works out. We'll see if they hold together. Another thing that I was trying with my my spinning recently is like a thigh roll. I just flick the spindle when I'm spinning, and so I was like, I'm gonna try the thigh roll. So, of course, what you do with new techniques and tips and tricks is you look it up on YouTube. So I looked up like drop spindle thigh roll on YouTube, and the funny thing is that, little side note here, yarn the Yarngasm episode 115, which was from like 2 years ago, and it was called Outlandish, came up, and I was like, well, maybe she'll talk about using the thigh roll in her episode, so I'll watch the episode. I haven't been watching. That's with Kristen from Bull and Vine Yarns. That's her podcast, Yarngasm. And I had watched her. I started watching hers more recently. It's been about a year since I've been watching knitting podcasts, so I hadn't seen something from 2014 of hers. So I was like, oh, I'll check it out. Plus, it was called Outlandish, and I just started reading the Outlander books, so I was like, maybe she talks about Outlander. I don't know. She does. Long story short, she does. She met the cast of Outlander when the first season of the Stars series came out, which was really cool. Anyway. She does not talk about thigh rolling to spin her drop spindle in that entire episode, so I don't know why that came up. But it was a fun little episode to watch because it interested me now. She read the books 2 years ago. I'm starting to read them now. It was kind of fun. Anyway, so that has been new things that I've been trying with spinning. And sitting down and spinning, but I like to stand and I still like to flick. So the thigh rolling, when I first was doing it, I mean, it's a very powerful spin. But if you don't, I still need to control it a little bit better because my spindle started going all like crazy wonky. Like when I would spin the thigh roll, my spindle would kind of like start really going crazy, to say the least. So I will stick with flicking for right now. But what I have been spinning is I've been interested in spinning, or like really jazzed about spinning my thin yarns, thin singles, I should say. So I brought out both of my sock spins that I've been working on. The first one is my loop bump. I got a loop bump about a year ago, and this is my first spin for socks. It's a very loose spin, so it won't make the best socks, but they will be my first hand-spun, hand-knit socks, and that's all I'm excited about. So I'm working on, it's a gradient from hot pink to white. I'm working on the lightest pink right now. So I pull out the full color and I split it in half for my loop bump. So here's the other half of the light pink. And this is what I've been working on. And it's just a single. I'm making a 2-ply. But I will show you what I've done so far since that was some of the yarn that I soaked. So here is let's organize this a little bit better. Here's the hot pink to medium pink yarn. It all looks hot pink. No, you can tell. This is the hot pink. And then it's this pink, the light pink, and then the rest of the bat is white. So that's what the gradient will look like when it's finished. And then I'm gonna knit socks. And like I said, my 2-ply is loose, and it's kind of like a sport DK fingering. It's not super consistent, but I'm gonna love them all the same. It is, of course I don't have the card for it, but it's a loop bump. It was merino, nylon, and stellina in some sort of percentages there. So it's perfect for socks, and that's why I decided to make socks, or spin for socks. And the second spin that I've been working on is from my Into the World. It's the Cheviot. And what was the colorway? Follow the Butterflies. This is a 4-ounce braid. And it's these teals and pinks and peach and purple. And I wanted to Navajo ply this spin, and I thought that I was spinning it thin enough. Apparently my thin is not thin enough because I'm getting more, well, actually this part kind of looks more fingering, but in some spots, again, it's more sport DK. But here is my Navajo plied, which I will show you again once I've soaked it. This is my first amount. I don't like to Navajo ply. This is definitely more of a learning the technique spin for me because I'm not very good at it. But because what happens when I Navajo ply is that 2 of the yarns will twist up really tight, and then the third one will kind of, in some sections, not the whole thing, but in some sections the third will then loosely spin around the 2 that have plied really tight. So I need to control that better. So I'll get almost like little floats of the third ply, kind of. I'll show it to you once it's soaked. Maybe it'll even out. I don't know, but it's not very even. But practice makes perfect. That's why I'm doing this. So I love the look of a Navajo ply is what I wanted to get at, is that I don't necessarily like to do it, but I like the look of it. Therefore, I need to learn it. I need to learn how to Navajo ply. So yeah, so that's what I've been working on for spinning. There was one more thing that I wanted to show you guys, and that was I made a sample of the Sweet Georgia Fibers and the Fleece Artist spin that I'm working on. I was originally going to spin it with the blue and the orange, and then I decided last episode that I wanted to do the orange together and the blue together, but I wanted to do a sample of the blue and the orange just to visually see it and for future reference. So I wanted to show you guys the yarn before I made my tiny little swatch, because I didn't actually ply that much. So here's the blue and the orange, and it's beautiful, and it's very soft, and I like it. But I don't think I would like a whole shawl looking like this, but I'm gonna knit up my swatch and show you next episode. I just wanted to show you the yarn first. But that's it. That is episode 32. Thank you for joining me today. I will see you next week when I talk about whips. I should have some actual knitting to show you. Well, some whips, I should say. I did show you knitting today. But I'll have whips, some more spinning, hopefully, and don't forget to sign up for the 500 subscriber giveaway. Go over to the Ravelry group. There's a link below, and enter that one. And just a reminder, my Etsy shop, the Ice Cream Sundae bags, will go up November 4th, this Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, what is it, daylight time? ETD? I actually looked that up today. We are in ETD right now, but Eastern Standard Time will happen the first Sunday in November. Anyway, you're not watching this show for that information. But I'm launching my ice cream bag collection. That's the more important part to take away from this this Friday. So I hope to see you there. But if not, I will see you next week. Thanks for joining me. Bye.